Well, we should be moving some legislation. I had the pleasure of signing what's called a discharge petition, along with Republicans and Democrats, to see if we can get the speaker to move forward on this on the PPP bill that sits there. So, if people don't know it, the Paycheck Protection Program, which was very successful, 75% of small businesses in York County that applied for it got it. Um, uh, so there's money still sitting in that account because the deadline to apply for it ran out, and the money was not all used. So that money's still sitting there. Meanwhile, our businesses are still struggling in Pennsylvania. As you know, there's still partial lockdowns, Matt. There are certain businesses. If you take the tour bus industry, which has a great home here in South Central Pennsylvania, but across Pennsylvania, nobody's taken a bus to Washington, D.C. The city's closed. Nobody's taken a bus to New York City. The city's closed, and in many cases, people just don't feel safe to go there. So that bus industry sits there without the funding that it needs to pay the bills for those multi-million-dollar buses that are sitting there.
Regardless of, and again, I may obviously have more agreements with than disagreements with the Democrats, but I want to be clear that you have this House and Senate stalemate where they're all just writing press releases and literally not working on getting some type of relief to small businesses so we can get this economy back up and running again. And literally now what you're dealing with this Supreme Court nomination, again, regardless of the merits of her, they're literally shutting down the Senate to try to jam this nomination through instead of trying to get a COVID relief package out. That shows you how broken the city is. We need to make sure that we're bringing Republicans and Democrats together so that we can try to get the aid to small businesses and the people that need the help so we can get this economy moving again. And we also need to make sure that we're working together on a vaccine and not spreading false information. I think you do two things. Number one is small businesses directly. I've toured a lot of small businesses in the district. They need help right now, and only the federal government can do it. While you're having a lot of these, seating capacity issues, 25%, 50%, for them to continue to be able to keep their employees on and stay open, they need direct assistance on that. If they get that direct assistance, they can still keep their employees hired. That will help. Two, the biggest thing we need to do is work in a bipartisan fashion, focused on science and health, to get this vaccine done and get this vaccine out into the general American population.
I will tell you, one of my frustrations, and I think a lot of frustration is certainly the business owners in the restaurant industry in particular, right? They continue to operate at a reduced capacity, and they're willing to do it. They want to keep their businesses safe. They want to keep their customers safe, certainly their staff. There's no upside to any of your customers, your staff getting sick, right? But what they're wondering is how come just our industry? Where are the metrics that say this industry, but not that industry? And we're not trying to pick on any particular industry, but this is our government, right? We don't want to be dictated to. We want to participate. I think it's going to be a combination of three things, Matt. I think it's going to continue to be the pandemic, whether it's personally how it affects you, whether it's your health, whether it's, you have to stay at home because your child is not at school and now you've become, an educator yourself, or you're just monitoring your kid's education. But it also might affect literally your financial ability to pay for your car, your home, your education, because you're working less or you're not working at all. And then also, so it's the pandemic, it's the economy, but also, personal and home security. We see a lot of discord in our society, and we're used to disagreements. And this is America. That's the normal course of things. But when it turns violent, and now that you have to put a sign in your yard to say that you support the police and pick a side on that, that's a very different look and a very different feel for a lot of people. And so I think it weighs on their mind.
We're talking about my holding police departments and other investigators accountable, where we found over 3,200 untested rape kits. And through my leadership, we've reduced that backlog by 97%, getting a lot of bad people off the streets and some semblance of justice for the victims. Also, when people come to know my personal story, look, we talked about how my family owned a small business growing up, how we all shared some responsibility in that. Look, I lost a brother to muscular dystrophy. I know what it's like. It was horrible for us as a family, but we were never able to have health insurance for him because he had a pre-existing condition. So I know families that are struggling with health insurance, and I'll fight for them. And also talked about my dad's struggles with addiction. He was wounded in Vietnam, won 2 Purple Hearts, but was given bad medical advice from the VA and had a path of addiction that eventually led to incarceration. I want to make sure we're looking out for our vets as well, making sure we're treating drug addiction like the disease it is. I believe both are necessary, meaning both individual and job related are both options. But this is where the enrollment into Medicaid comes in for someone that loses a job, at least doing it on a short-term basis until they come back full employment. Look, I get a lot of unions and a lot of people that negotiate with their employer have won good healthcare packages. So I don't want to touch that. That they've won that right through collective bargaining, and I don't want to touch that. But for others, particularly when it comes to small businesses, where the small business clearly can't afford to have a package for their whole employees, we've got to have more affordable options for those individuals.
One of my frustrations is that if you're opposed to the Affordable Care Act, which I view and many people do as centralized government control of healthcare, if you're opposed to that you don't want healthcare for everybody and that there's not another solution. There are other solutions and we need to pursue them with all due vigor. And I'm frustrated again by the fact that in the House, we're not moving bills to do that, yet the president's out there taking unilateral action. It's good action, but we should be assisting in that, whether it's prescription drugs and of course the lower cost of healthcare in general during this last 3.5 years by offering different plans and different choices where people can say, I need this in my plan, but I can't afford that, or I don't want that, allowing those different options. And then finally, really dealing with pre-existing conditions without the heavy hand of government, so to speak, being all inclusive in that and one size fits all. Racism of any form and all forms is wrong. End of sentence, right? But I will tell you, trying to assassinate the police, burning and looting buildings, burning police cars, and cordoning off areas of your city for lawlessness is not the answer, which is why I've been continuing to seek solutions. On policing in particular, I voted in favor of the Justice Act offered by Tim Scott, but did more than that. I went and visited and spoke with our local police forces to make sure we were hitting the mark, to make sure we were improving on things and make sure we're not making things more difficult. And that's an informed discussion and an informed decision to try and move the ball forward. The frustration I have, Matt, among other things, is that while I was able to vote on it as an amendment, we can't get that out of the House.
Peaceful protest is part of our First Amendment. And anyone, regardless of whether I agree or disagree with their views, must have that right. Any form of violence is condemned, whether it's coming from the left or the right, must be condemned, completely unacceptable. Now, what does social justice mean to me? We've clearly seen too many people of color being harmed by too many law enforcement. We've seen the videos, clearly unacceptable. Systemic racism is real and it must be addressed. And it must be addressed through all of us. I don't mean that, anyone, here is more or less to blame, but we all can be part of this solution. For example, some of our school funding in Pennsylvania clearly underfunds our poorer school districts. Our Pennsylvania schools are funded from local property taxes. So when you have poor areas, those kids have less money in their schools. That's something that clearly needs to be addressed. Yes, I believe we have a lot of dedicated election workers in counties and states all across the country. They're going to do their best. And I believe we're going to have an accurate count and a safe and secure account.
I have reduced confidence, I got to tell you. I don't know why we just didn't expand the use of the absentee ballot, quite honestly. We're very familiar with that. The system works well. You can track where the ballots went and when they came back and so on and so forth. I'm very concerned at things like additional drop boxes. To me, a drop box is the post office box. Just put your ballot in the box before the election, or in this case, on the day of the election, and you will have voted. I don't know why we need days beyond with ballots that are not postmarked because the postage was prepaid. That seems like it's rife for potential abuse.
Best spot to eat in the 10th district?
The hillside along 83 for steak.
Best concert you've been to?
The Rolling Stones.
Ooh, good. Where?
Philadelphia.
All right. You've been aboard Air Force One. What's the coolest feature aboard Air Force One?
The coolest feature is probably the I want to say that the secure telephone on there, where you can call your office, they patch you through, and your office hears, "This is Air Force One calling."
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You so
Now
your
that's for the
opponent.
guy that's riding in the back, right? I mean, as a
Well,
pilot, there's a lot of cool features about Air
that's
Force One.
true. That's true. All right. So your opponent, Eugene, does CrossFit. You are military. Both of you are fit gentlemen. I asked him the same question. What do you bench press?
Oh my goodness.
All right.
I'm learning
Let's
to cook,
rephrase.
actually.
What's the best you've pressed?
Oh my goodness. The best I've pressed is probably like 215 or something like that.
Okay, you're right on board with Eugene. So we're just having fun here.
Yeah.
Last question. What was your most recent Halloween costume?
I think my most recent Halloween costume might have been a priest.
When? How long ago?
Oh, I think this is some time ago. This might be, I haven't worn a costume in probably 15 years back.
What is the best spot to eat in the tent?
Look, the Left Bank is the best restaurant. I mean, that's my opinion.
Best concert you've been to?
Springsteen, 2003.
Where?
PNC Park.
Okay. All right. As a Pittsburgh guy, is Primanti Brothers overrated?
Primanti Brothers, it's impossible to overrate perfection.
What do you bench press?
My maximum is probably about 275. I work when I'm doing a heavy set, it's usually at the 225 range.
What is your last Halloween costume? Most recent.
It was a Jedi.
Of course it was. Of course it was. Last question
It's a
was.
pretty easy one because you just got to get the robe over you, and of course I have a lightsaber, so it's actually a pretty easy costume.
Here's a side question. How many times over the course of since 1972, when Star Wars came out, have you been a Star Wars character for Halloween? Is the better question.
It's probably like half.
Of course.
It's either that or like a baseball player. I mean,
Yeah, right.
I'm not very creative on these Halloween costumes. It's either a baseball player or a Star Wars character. And by the way, that Star Wars character is almost always Luke. So what?
Of course it is.